live from the same dingy, dark bunker that you're used to seeing every single day. My name is Jobob. I'm here with my friend Anthony, and we're going to talk about last week, but today. It's we could call it last week, tonight, today, but John Oliver already
taken.
Yeah, John Oliver already took that. So we're going to discuss all the clips from last week right now. This is a brand new thing we're doing. It's going to be kind of fun. We're a little off our rockers here. We decided to go live on Facebook instead of just recording it. We don't have an intro for this show yet, so I don't know what we do about that. You want to flip the cameras fast and fun and make it a fun little intro? Or what are you doing?
Da 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 da.
My name is Jobob. That is Anthony. This is last week. We're discussing last week today.
How many bears do you think could fit in a presidential limo?
How many bears do you think could fit in the presidential limo?
Yeah.
Is the president in the limo? Which president are we talking about, too? Because Joe Biden is substantially thinner than Donald Trump.
President Joe Biden is substantially smaller than President Donald Trump.
So are we talking, is the president in the limo with the bears? Are we talking big grizzly bears, or are we talking like bear cubs?
This is a more complicated question than I originally would have thought, but I think we should answer it.
I don't think this is going to take our time to doing this. I want to start off with this hilarious clip. Last week, where did last week go? Last week, not last week, the week before last week, President Joe Biden said something ridiculous, as he often does.
No.
He was talking about the border situation. Peter Ducey of Fox News asked him a question like, hey, what is going on with this $450,000 for illegal immigrants and their families? And President Joe Biden...
Just saying that makes me laugh. That's insane.
Well, President Joe Biden, this is the first time he heard of it. And then he said, well, let me play the clip and then we'll discuss, and then we'll go into what he said last week. We're talking about last week today here. Then we'll go into what he said.
Already too confusing. Last week, but not if last week was last week.
Listen to the President of the United States, what he said.
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah, but it's not true.
So this is a garbage report?
Yeah.
Okay. So
$450,000 per person. Is that what you're saying?
That was separated from a family member at the border under the last administration.
That's not going to happen.
So
he's like, I proposed what?
We said what? But seriously, that's
somebody's getting fired, but I don't think he has the ability to do that. Like, I don't think he's in charge to do that. So,
so clearly, like, it's pretty obvious when Peter Ducey asked that question that was the first time he'd ever heard of it. So that was
You gotta wonder when the last time the president learned about one of his own policies on the podium. Like, when was the last time that happened?
So that happened last Thursday, I believe. So not
last Thursday or last
no,
Thursday?
like 10 days ago Thursday. Then at the beginning of last week, he was asked about it again, clearly now having learned about his own policy that he didn't know
then
about.
He briefed on the policy that if you can't see,
then he said this to a reporter last week. Listen to this.
You said last week that this report about migrant families at the border getting payments was garbage.
No, I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. Yes, you
You literally did. We just heard you.
He said, no. He said, that's garbage. And he said, no. Now, to be fair, because we're trying to be fair here, even though we make fun of the president because he's very easily made fun of.
He makes it easy to be unfair.
But... So we want to be fair and play the rest of this clip. Then he gets into this weird exchange with this reporter about, no, it was the number. It was the number that I had just heard about from the policy from Peter Ducey of Fox News. That was the number that I was mad about. And then he says it was the number, but then he does this weird, like, Joe Biden, so older people sometimes, and Joe Biden is geriatric by most standards, say things, and for some reason he thinks...
President Perry Jerry Joe.
He thinks that being angry means passionate. I think he wants to be passionate about this issue. It's a very important issue, but he comes off as just a cranky old man. Watch this.
You got a problem?
The number I was referring to.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing.
Sure.
If, in fact, because of the outrageous behavior of the last administration, you coming across the border, whether it was legal or illegal, and you lost your child, it's gone, you deserve some kind of compensation.
So
hold on.
Yeah.
Why would you deserve some compensation for that? Like, honest question.
Well, we can get into that whole thing. So how about if you break into the country illegally and something bad happens to you? Not to say that there's so many angles here.
But if I break a law and I have children and I go to prison and I'm separated.
No,
from
your
my
children get to come with you. Don't you know that? That's a new thing. Your
Family jail.
it's like the bathroom at the mall. Yeah. There's regular men's jail, then there's women's jail, then there's non-binary jail, and then there's family jail.
Family jail sounds like more fun. I'm not actually no. I take that back. That sounds way worse. The only thing worse than being locked up in a cell by myself is being locked up in a cell with little children.
Oh, I thought you were going to say with my wife, who's mad at me for being locked up in a cell.
I'm going to tell her you didn't say that. I'm not going to tell her you said that.
So he comes off and says, you lost your kid. As if, did we just lose kids for there's too many nuances here. But he's alluding to the fact that we just completely lost them altogether. No, what happens when you commit a crime in the United States and crossing the border illegally? I don't know if you know this. That actually does count as a crime. But if you
breaking a law is usually a crime. Yeah.
Wow, unbelievable. But if you cross the border illegally and de facto commit a crime, and
the fact that he even says that too, he says whether you cross the border legally or illegally, it's like, so you're saying like. If you were going to say like, well, we don't care how you cross the border. No, but he admits right there that it is a crime. And it's like, so at this point, you are acknowledging that people who cross a border illegally have more rights than an American citizen, because an American citizen, if they commit a crime, are separated from their children.
Yeah, I'd like you to try that out. Maybe you should try that out.
I just did.
But that was, again, ridiculous that he said earlier in the week, but unfortunately the week got weirder from there.
Hold on. Before we go any further, I actually, like, just as a social experiment, I would kind of like to see this one happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like us giving $450,000 to anyone who just shows up on the doorstep. Like, could you just imagine the fallout from that? One, the amount of angry people in this country.
There would be
the amount of angry immigrants in this country would be just honestly incredible to see, not necessarily in a positive or negative, just a spectacle to watch. The amount of angry people who spent decades, literally, of their life trying to get here and establish themselves here, and people then showed up illegally and are given $500,000. And then just the concept of how many people would begin showing up for their $500,000.
Oh, I was just going to say, I would be in the car driving down to the border trying to get caught.
Yeah, we've already talked about this. Like, road trip. How many people can we get in the car? Like, you, me, both of our wives. Like, do kids count? Do they get money? What about dogs? Like, I don't, like, are we giving out, like, we could put together a couple $1 million.
especially, yeah, if there were dogs. Maybe
we
dogs
could afford a real studio.
So we got to move on. The week got crazier as it is. Speaker Nancy Pelosi was at the climate summit.
Speaker Pelosi, love it.
What did you just say?
Pelosi.
I
came up with that.
What is that? What does that mean?
I don't know. She's like 130 years old. Probably slow.
She is very sharp for being as old as she is.
Unfortunately, she is pretty smart.
Nancy Pelosi is very good at what she does.
Yeah.
I wish we had a Nancy Pelosi on our side of the aisle.
We do not.
Yeah. But this is Nancy Pelosi.
We are not on one side of the aisle. We are right down the middle, unbiased all of the time.
You're right. That's exactly correct. But Nancy Pelosi went to the climate change summit thing in Glasgow.
Why is a California senator,
she's a congresswoman
in Europe, congressman, whatever? Why is a California government representative in Europe?
She is a federal representative. I get what you're saying here.
She should be in Washington, D.C. or California.
We
have all kinds of people that their job is to do things like
despite her being there or not being there. Listen to what she said. Okay. This is are you going to drink water? Don't drink any water. This is a lot. There's a lot of expensive equipment on the table here, and I don't want this to get ruined.
Yeah, but most of it's your expensive
by you spitting up water. Listen to this from Speaker Pelosi.
Build Back Better and bipartisan infrastructure framework recognizes the interconnectedness of climate change and gender justice.
What? I'm glad you didn't have any water because, yeah, climate change, and that's what Build Back Better, the Biden Build Back Better plan, the trillions of dollars of turn us into Venezuela money going to the American people if this thing passes, is made to address climate change and gender justice.
I don't even think it's meant, the way she said it, it's not even both. It's that they're one thing.
Well, it is. Those are one thing. Climate change is gender justice.
What on earth is gender justice?
I don't actually know.
Let me tell you what gender justice is.
Oh, here we go. We're going to school.
Gender justice is when I upset my wife, which I would never do, but happens a couple times a week. And then I apologize.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it. That's gender justice.
I thought you were going to go on there for a little while. That's gender justice. Okay, well, cool. So that's also
No,
climate
actually,
change.
what gender justice actually is when my wife upsets me and I apologize. That is gender justice.
So what you're saying is if you do more of
Which
that...
is actually what's happening here. Other people, other countries have messed up the environment, India, China, and we are apologizing for it. Not that we don't have any role in it, but we have a very minor role compared to the other countries, and we're up there apologizing.
I was talking about this today on the actual the show talking about the United States is what 13% responsible for carbon emissions.
And yeah,
if you wanted to make any sort of substantial difference in the climate CO2 emissions, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, the United States kneecapping its economy and completely going, if we went entirely green today, you know what that would do to the global emissions? Absolutely freaking nothing. So when people talk about
I would argue that it would probably be negative because, like you said, we'll kneecap our economy to the point where it will force other economies into regression and recession, which would probably wind up with more carbon, more things that cause carbon emissions, older vehicles, things like that.
So when we're talking about this sort of stuff, I do think it is funny that your lefty types that really, really love the whole climate change issue, I don't think they understand the ramifications of what it would actually take. It would take going to war with China to actually make any sort of a substantial difference in the CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
So anyways.
A war that is looking more and more like we might lose, or at least be a more solid fight than it used
talk
to be.
about that. That's next. We're going to talk about that next week because a lot of things are happening this week, which we can't talk about this week. We're talking. This is last week today.
Yeah,
talking about last
week.
We
talk
today.
about this week next week.
Yeah, sure. So what also happened last week?
We need a new show concept.
Do you know?
Do
you know of Senor Pete Buttigieg? 6-week vacation.
Father of the year. Yeah.
6-week vacation. Pete Buttigieg. He can't do like Zoom calls. Can't even call into the office during the biggest transportation crisis in American history. Got to take an entire 6 weeks off. Anyways, Pete Buttigieg was on the stump. He wasn't on the stump. He was in the White House press briefing room talking about, you're drinking water? Don't drink water. This is another one of those where you can't be drinking water or else we're going to have some serious electrical problems. But this is Pete Buttigieg talking about, I kid you not, I wish I was kidding, racist bridges. This is not a joke. Listen to this.
An underpass was constructed such that a bus carrying mostly black and Puerto Rican kids to a beach, or that would have been, in New York was designed too low for it to pass by. But that obviously reflects racism that went into those design choices.
So if a bus happens to be carrying black and Puerto Rican kids to the beach, and they can't, I'm talking here, and if they can't get to the beach, that means the contractor, the engineer who designed the bridge, clearly racist.
Who has the time to design racist bridges? Like, is this a big industry? Is this an underground? Like, what on earth is he talking about?
I don't know. I wonder that too. Was the county or city that commissioned this bridge looking for an explicitly racist architecture firm? and
could you imagine? Like,
do they list it on their website?
Seeking an architect for a racist bridge construction.
Seeking an architect for a racist bridge. It's a Craigslist ad. But again, I don't, and nobody's asking the question that I've been asking. Does that mean if buses are too tall to go under racist bridges, does that make the bus racist?
That's a good point. Who's at fault?
Yeah, it's either the bus
Racism has happened, but is the bridge too low or is the bus too high?
I don't. Both of them are racist
Because
all of it's racist.
Theoretically, the bus constructor could go, I know this bus is going to carry Black and Puerto Rican kids. We're going to make it tall.
No, there's a possibility that it will carry Black and Puerto Rican kids, because if the bus is if the bus is carrying white kids and it's too tall to go underneath the low racist bridge, then the bridge is not racist. It's actually racist fluid. The bridge is racist fluid.
Fluid is not a word I like used describing bridges.
I wouldn't either.
I prefer solid when talking about bridges.
But that's Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg talking about the infrastructure of racism that is apparently overwhelming in this country. What do you want to talk about next? You want to go into Rittenhouse, or you want to go to Joe Biden again? We just did Joe Biden. You want to talk about Rittenhouse for a little bit? I get the feeling.
Yeah, let's go over Rittenhouse.
I feel like
I don't like this one. I think it's boring. Let's get through it.
Okay, so we'll
make it fun.
This is a okay. Let's start here. I want to start here because we've all seen all of the footage. If you're watching this, I would imagine, I don't know what camera's on. If you're watching this, I would imagine you've seen all of the footage that pretty much for the last year would have exonerated Kyle Rittenhouse. It went to trial because it's a political trial. We'll talk about that in a second. And you're jumping to talk about that whole situation. But it did go to trial to appease the woke mob, to keep them from burning down the streets. But there's a lot of misinformation floating around. And Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks was talking about how she had no idea that these were actually some of the facts. She hadn't seen the footage. She hadn't heard people talking about it from witness testimony. This is Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks, which I don't know if you know this, is not a conservative news outlet. Listen to this.
Actually, I was under the assumption that Rittenhouse was the person who was chasing after Joseph Rosenbaum, that's how it had started. But I was wrong about that.
So one, props to admitting that she was wrong, but
it's not something you hear every day.
Seriously, and good for her. But the bigger picture component that I think I want to talk about is the idea that so many people had no idea of any of the facts revolving around this case. You look at Twitter, and there was a bunch of people that I saw that were like, wait a minute, the two guys that he killed and the other guy that he shot were all white? Everybody involved in this is a white person?
You mean he was pointing a gun at him when he shot him?
Yeah, no, seriously. But there's such a lack of knowledge, ignorance, I guess, if you want to say, regarding the actual facts there, that a bunch of people were like thrown off guard. Wait a minute, I just assumed that this was a white kid shooting black people. Is that not what happened?
Right.
And so to get to the genesis of this, I want to play a couple clips here as to why people might have thought that. This is a compilation of people throughout the entire last year talking about the Rittenhouse case. And again, it's ridiculous that people like Anna Kasparian would have thought that, and people on Twitter would have thought that, but also it's understandable if you listen to quacks like this on the TV.
House is basically what you would have had in a school shooter. He was going out to shoot people.
Just running around, shooting and killing protesters.
A 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, a white, Trump-supporting, MAGA-loving,
who was radicalized by Trumpism, took his AR-15 to Kenosha and became a killer.
So if you listened to that crap for the last year, it's understandable why you would think, Joe Scarborough, former Republican congressman, going on MSNBC Morning Joe on the most watched show that they have, literally saying he's just running around shooting people. Can you believe that? I can't believe that.
It's baffling to me, and this shouldn't be surprising at this point, but multiple of these clips brought up who he voted for.
Yeah.
Which
hold on. He couldn't vote. He's 17 years old.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
But even then, suggesting who he would vote for. The kid can't even vote. This kid would have voted for this person. Therefore, what does that have to do with the trial? What does that have to do with this kid? It makes no sense that someone's political ideology is brought immediately into an action that they may or may not have taken. It's insane.
It's understandable why people would think that because of how crazy bad the media had been covering this. Last thing on the Rittenhouse thing, let me ask you, do you think they learned their lesson? Do you think the media learned their lesson and is shaped up and is covering it with a fair a look at justice that the media has now with the Kyle Rittenhouse case? Do you think they learned their lesson?
Do you think I think
Yes.
that they learned their lesson?
Yes.
No, they didn't.
Well,
Obviously not.
You're correct, because watch this. This is an MSNBC fill-in for Joy Reid. He's going to say one thing, and then we're going to watch a clip of the exact opposite thing being said in the courtroom testimony. Watch this.
Grosskreutz acknowledged that he was armed with a pistol, but says his hands were raised when he was shot by Rittenhouse.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
So that's the exact opposite thing on the news.
That's what I'm talking about. This is the problem. Not only were they completely out of bounds all before this, but the president of the United States, President Joe Biden, called Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist effectively in a commercial. He's like the Nicholas Sandmann kid. Nicholas Sandmann, the highest paid in liberal media, he's about to be Kyle Rittenhouse.
How is how can the president even comment on something like this?
I don't know why, but apparently it was a race thing. I have no idea. But yeah, they haven't learned a lesson. He literally on MSNBC was saying the exact opposite of something that just happened. Like, that's like me saying Anthony today is wearing a lime green shirt. It is way too tight. You can see his nipples right through the shirt. That's very cold in the studio.
That part might be true.
But the lime green blouse that he has on today.
I have never worn a blouse. I don't know anyone who's worn a blouse. I don't even know a woman who's worn a blouse. We don't use that term anymore. This is another day.
But that's like what they're saying.
Yeah,
is I'm
like,
telling that. It's like, no, I'm looking at him right now. It's clearly not a lime green blouse.
He says it's not a lime green.
And then CNN would report Anthony Delio denies wearing lime green blouse. Getting back to President Joe Biden, he said something last week that actually was right. Can you believe it?
That sounds unlikely, but I'm willing to listen with open ears.
So he said something that was right, and actually pretty interesting to hear from the President of the United States. He said something right, and let me play this.
Play it.
And then you can decide for yourself if the president was correct or not. I think he was correct.
Is people have more money now because of the first major piece of legislation I passed. Well, with more people with money buying product and less product to buy, what happens? Prices go up.
So the president, in my mind, accurately described inflation.
People have more money, prices go up.
Yeah.
Less product, prices go up.
An accurate description of how prices go up. And then, you know who he blamed? President Joe Biden blamed President Joe Biden for the increase in...
Well, the buck does stop with him.
No, the buck continues to go out with him. Lots of bucks continue to go out with President Joe Biden.
Isn't that what he said? Was it the buck stops with him? It was.
That was regarding Afghanistan.
No. It was like during his campaign. It was like, the buck stops with. I think it was the buck stops with me.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's the saying.
Which is a hilarious point you just made. The buck continues to flow repeatedly with him.
He said it's ironic because at the beginning of my administration, I gave people more money, and guess what? Now they have more money and they're buying more things, and there's less thing to buy, and prices go up. Yes. Mr.
What
President.
should we do? Let's give them more money.
So now the president is pushing the Build Back Better, Turn Us into Venezuela bill that is going to give people more money, which, hold on. Using President Joe Biden's rationale here, if people have too much money and that makes prices go up, what do you think will happen if you get more money?
We'll have to give them more money.
You're right. I think that's what
I realized that didn't make sense, but that's what it will happen. Well, we've given them more money, so what we need to do is give them more money.
I think that's an accurate description of how the president sees this sort of thing. Oh my gosh. What did we not go?
Whose money do you think they're going to give them?
They're the rich. They're going to tax the rich.
The rich, yeah.
Do you remember? I don't want to get into this because this is a whole other thing. Because the plan that the plan that they were going to spend was like what, $3 trillion of money that we don't have. On things that we don't need. And they're going to pay for it by taxing the rich. Do you know what the total sum of money would have been raised by the government if they taxed the rich?
$30. I don't know.
A little bit higher than that, about $250 billion. So we're going to spend $3 trillion and we're going to pay for it with $250 billion.
8%. But it wouldn't be, but let's not forget that it won't be $3.5 trillion. It'd be like 9.5, because that's how this works. You pass a bill and then you add to it after it's been passed.
Yeah. And we'll pay for it with fantasy money that billionaires won't be around to give, because the second the number is way too low to pay for it. They're not going to get $250 billion. And that's not going to cover the entire cost. And they're not going to get that anyway, because guess what billionaires are going to do? Like, peace out. I live in Belize now.
Billionaires will they always have been, and they always will be smarter than politicians.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second.
That's
Joe Biden is the smartest person in America, which is why he's president.
What?
Here's our last thing that's really interesting. Do you want to talk about white supremacy? We're going to talk about white supremacy.
My favorite topic.
I get called white supremacy like every day, a white supremacist. White supremacy is among the most diverse, is growing to become the most diverse population in the country.
White supremacy is really adding diversity to its board of advisors.
But this was Winsome Sears won the lieutenant governorship in Virginia a couple weeks.
We are winning the equity battle in the white supremacy.
The saying actually, white supremacists are quickly becoming the most diverse group in America. Winsome Sears is a black woman who won.
She's awesome.
She's great. She's a veteran, has worked in the education system, is an immigrant. Not that matters. I don't think being a black woman actually matters at all.
It's the least important part about her.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, like she's a great candidate for whatever. She's not a great candidate for a black woman. She's a great candidate regardless.
It would be offensive to call her a great candidate for being a black woman. That's an asterisk.
But that matters to your liberal left.
It matters to racists.
There you go. You
right?
said it. There you go. There you go. That's what it is.
Us white supremacists don't care.
This was on Joy Reid's show. So this is really interesting. Joy Reid, nobody watches Joy Reid's show.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Joy Reid's show on MSNBC, the most unwatchable and also most unwatched show in cable news, had this guy.
How unwatchable and unwatched are often they're often the same.
This guy was on her show talking about the white. I'm just going to play the clip. I have this problem of trying to describe the clip that we're about to play rather than just playing it. Listen to this from Joy Reid last week.
Here, they want white supremacy by ventriloquist effect. There is a black mouth moving, but a white idea through the running on the runway of the tongue of a figure who justifies and legitimates the white supremacist practices.
Runway of the tongue.
Runway of the tongue of legitimating. That sounds like something I shouldn't be doing. I don't even know where I don't even know where to start. Like, what do you begin with this? Not only is it extraordinarily demeaning to Winsome Sears, who is a great candidate to begin with, not only is it extraordinarily demeaning, it's just factually incorrect. Unless, of course, white supremacists can encompass browns such as myself.
Does Winsome Sears know that she's a white supremacist?
I'm not sure she's aware.
And do you have to know that you're white supremacist to be a white supremacist?
This is like, and what are you giving, again, if anything that this guy is saying is true, what kind of credit are you giving to the quote unquote white supremacists? The white supremacists are so racist, they voted for a black woman.
Again, they're working on their diversity.
Their white supremacists are growing their diversity across the nation. It's really good to see. Do you know a white supremacist?
Not only do I not know any white supremacists, I've never met anyone who has met a white supremacist.
That's true. I don't either. I've never met one myself.
I would challenge anyone who's listening to think if they have ever met a white supremacist or know anyone who knows a white supremacist.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who knows a white supremacist.
That doesn't mean they don't exist. And this in no way would invalidate the suffering or whatever that someone who is experienced hate from an actual white supremacist experienced.
Mm-hmm.
It just says that it happens a lot less than people like this would like to make us assume.
Well, then you have a definition problem.
Of course.
If in fact you and I are white supremacists, the diverse the diverse spread of white supremacy, then yeah, I guess they're everywhere. If you're going to call half the country white supremacists.
Well, it's like, and the problem, again, and this keeps happening, is that it immediately makes no one a white supremacist. Because at this point, so many people have been called a racist, myself and you included, which makes no sense, that, like, I no longer care.
Oh, yeah.
I do not care. Call me a racist all you want, because you can think whatever you want. I know that I don't have prejudice.
Yeah.
So I don't care. You go ahead and call me. And if you want to call me a white supremacist, you can do that.
Yeah. And
because
it gives...
I know that I'm not. And now that term means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing at all. Which unfortunately means that I cannot help root out and stop actual white supremacists, however many there might be in the backwoods somewhere.
Yeah. It's ground cover. Just gives cover to people who are actually doing bad things.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the best day of the year to rob someone would be Halloween.
Why?
Well, because you can dress up as a robber and no one would know. You can dress up as a police officer. Like, it doesn't, like...
That is kind of funny.
If everyone's a white supremacist, the white supremacists can hide in plain sight. It's Halloween every day of the year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Not to mention how demeaning it is.
Oh,
for the minorities who are getting. Well, if you vote this way, that means you're a white supremacist. No, how about they just have their own ideas and like to talk about things as such?
Think about how demeaning that is. Like, no black woman could ever be elected office on her own merit. She must be a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, but such is your liberal media and your liberal outlets continuing to push this nonsense. Do I want to talk about Joe Biden and the whole Jim Crow on steroids thing?
Yeah.
All right. Since we're not on any sort of like time constraint here, this is exactly like how Joe Biden was talking about the whites or the voting laws in Georgia. Remember, he called them Jim Crow on steroids. Not only was it Jim Crow, which was awful, it was Jim Crow it was worse than that.
It's hilariously offensive to the people who actually
experienced Jim Crow, because Jim Crow was terrible.
Yeah.
Black people got beaten in the streets just for the mistake of wandering into the polling station. Absolutely awful. And now kids, your fifth grader, is going to be learning about Jim Crow, and they just heard the president say, well, having an ID to vote is worse than Jim Crow.
Can you imagine those those lessons, like a teacher, and you're like what? Like, how do you teach that? Like, do you draw on a board? Like, well, this is a white child. He is capable of getting an ID. This is a black child, not capable of getting an ID. Like, what is that? How these conversations go? Like, they're so insane.
Yeah.
Like, even a 5-year-old or a fifth grader or whatever is gonna be like, I don't think I am incapable of doing that. Like, what? Like,
maybe that means you're racist.
Yeah. I think my teacher might be a white supremacist. But I think I might be a white supremacist.
But it's seriously, like, kids in school learning about Jim Crow are just going to think, oh, so black people couldn't get IDs in the 70s or 60s in the South? Oh, that doesn't seem all that bad to me.
Yeah.
It devalues the horrific Jim Crow laws.
Not to mention their grandfather, who lived through Jim Crow, had an ID, was driving around in a car and doing all that. And so now they're just confused. Like,
Yeah.
oh, my like, what?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, not to go back to Kyle Rittenhouse. It's going to be interesting to see if he files a lawsuit against President Joe Biden.
That would be so fun.
Joe Biden, again, essentially called Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist, which defamation lawsuit? Yeah, I think so. I want to end on this. This is a fun one. Oops, I'm sorry. I messed that up. This kid, I would vote for him for president today. We're going to end on a lighter-hearted note. I don't know if you've been paying attention or watching the show at all. It's been a little bit dreary. Last week was a bummer.
Yeah. Next week.
Next
week will be better next week.
This week, I love it.
We really need a better concept for this show.
But watch this kid. Just again, ending this week, last week on a lighter-hearted note.
Do you think kids should be able to vote?
No. If they got a chance to vote, they might make a wrong choice. You have to grow up and think everything through before you start to vote.
Do you think you would make a good president?
I don't think right now, but probably in the future. If you were the president, you'd have to you might not know how much work you get and how stressed you'd probably get because a bunch of people will be crowding around you and taking pictures, and you'll be maybe even helicopters just taking pictures. It's very stressing.
How old are you?
6.
Yeah, I would vote for that kid for president today.
Yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't.
But yeah, seriously, you know why I think I'd vote for him? Not to get to the border situation, but the border situation, the Harvard-Harris poll that came out a couple months ago regarding the border basically said that the majority of people in the United States think that Joe Biden, the best thing he could have done regarding the border during the transition was absolutely nothing.
Isn't that what he did?
No, he revoked all of the Trump policies that were working at the border.
Oh, right. He revoked everything that was doing something,
yes,
and therefore did nothing.
Well, he made it worse. Had he done absolutely nothing, it would have been fine. And you know who I think would have done nothing? This kid. I think this kid would have done absolutely nothing because,
frankly, someone doing nothing in the White House, I think, is what we all are looking for.
Oh, I would I think the soul of government should be one guy in a room saying yes or no to things.
The benevolent king.
Yeah, the benevolent king sitting alone in the room. That's what I think government should be. So yeah, effectively, if the president just kind of sat around and did nothing other than keep the shores of America safe, I'm fine with that. And I think
Which
this
is
kid
hilarious because that's the only thing the current guy isn't doing.
Yeah, actively screwing it up is what he's doing. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would vote for this kid for president just because I think he would do nothing better.
Yeah.
Literally nothing but better.
Well, you got to think so our current president is very old.
No.
And your mental capacity as you get older, and we have seen this, goes down.
No.
A kid at 6, his mental capacity is going up.
I see where you're going with this.
So you got to think, what is the average mental capacity over an 8-year, or I guess 2 4-year terms? Where are we at? Because by the end of this thing, this kid's going to be 10, 12, 14, whatever.
He would be 10. Simple math would suggest that a 6-year-old plus 4 years would be 10.
But if he gets, we'll give him reelected.
Oh, he's going to get elected twice.
Well, if he does nothing, I'm voting for him again.
Yeah, true. If he doesn't do anything, let's ban the re-election law. 9 terms this kid could serve. I love it. That's going to do it for us today. You have any last thoughts here?
No. I'm really hoping this week is better next week.
There's a lot of build up to that. No. We'll see you next week on what's the show called? This Week Today? Last Week Right Now? Last Week Right Now? Can't go Last Week Tonight. That's already been filled, and it's not tonight, depending on where you are. If you're in Uzbekistan, I think it's tonight.
Today from last week.
Today, yeah. Maybe we'll call it that. All right.
I don't know.
That's going to do it for us. We will see you next time discussing this week next week. God bless America.
Later.